1, 2, testing.
Are we live?
And we are live now. We should be.
Which
We're live.
is that camera up there?
Yeah, that's the camera.
Yeah, I love it. Hey everyone, how you doing? Good to see you all again.
Here we are. We almost forgot that
you.
we're supposed to be
This is our branding.
guys with
drinking tea.
We're branded. It's like this branding strategy where we do what we want to do anyway, and then we try and call it a brand.
Yeah.
It's a cold day and we're drinking tea.
To me, it kind of came off the whole like comedians in cars getting coffee, which was probably branded much better and also a lot funnier.
Fair enough. So here we are.
Can be Jerry Seinfeld.
We are all over the internets, and we're talking about Sunday.
We're talking about Sunday, where we talked about bread. And actually we ate bread, which actually to me was possibly the most fun part of it. Just walking around with bread and handing it out. And also just intrigued at how much people can enjoy something as simple as bread.
Well, let's make it clear. This was not your average bread.
It was
this
not.
was
It was
homemade bread by Eric Schmidt, correct?
And in the first service, you could actually... I don't know if you believe that you can smell warmth. I don't know if that's true, but like whatever, you cut it and it was still warm. Oh. And because of the warmth, at least the smell just sort of, you could feel it. Just reminded me of when I was working with a church once, and I would cook bacon for students in the second service, and just the way the church was set up, the bacon smell would waft up and down the corridors, and people would have to sit through church while the smell of bacon entered the room.
That's awesome.
It was wonderful.
Oh man,
wonderful for me.
I like it. Yeah. So Sunday, you talked about bread, but specifically, we're in the Lord's Prayer series still. Or
verse 11 of chapter 6, Matthew. Give us today our daily bread. Six very poignant words, but very simple words, and so obviously in Jesus' time, there is this big discourse about bread. It's on everybody's minds in a way that is probably not true today, because they just didn't have it. It just wasn't as readily available. So I think that sense for them of like, where's the bread coming from tomorrow was probably more real than it is for us. We probably have some things that are similar, but whether they're quite as important or quite as needed, I don't know.
Yeah. So was there anything that you felt like you wanted to share that you had to leave out?
Yeah. So I think it opens up to these wide possibilities, right? On one hand, you're kind of shifting maybe in one of two directions. You can either start thinking about how do you help people ask for what they need? Or are you trying to help people recognize that maybe they have what they need? And I think that's the temptation. Like, I could think of endless stuff. And I think there was probably a point in my life where I thought, if I earn a certain amount of money or I have a certain type of job, the needs will sort of just disappear. And yet, is that ever true? I don't know. So I think to me, what I really felt like I left out was this sort of descent into, should people pray for new cars? Should people pray for a new house? Should people are all that felt like the big potential sort of shift to me. That I just.
So you're saying they shouldn't?
I don't even know. I mean, do I feel like God gives people material blessings sometimes? But I think like it's maybe one of those things you can choose to keep asking for that, and sometimes maybe God will give you what you think you want if you're persistent enough. But I wonder whether when you get down that road, you find out it probably distracted me from a load of better things. There was this one famous prosperity preacher that I heard about once. He actually came to visit the church I used to be at, and he was saying that at one point he had this couple come and join the church, and they came back to him like 3 to 6 months after they joined the church, and they were like, "Is this it?" And he said, "Well, what do you mean? Is this it?" And they're like, "We've done everything you told us to do. Like, we've prayed that God would provide. We've given the right amount of money. We've done all of these things. And we're the most miserable we've ever been in our lives. So you have to tell us that following Jesus is
Were they miserable because they were poorer?
They were miserable because they were way richer. Like they said, like, we've never seen so much money, but they had bought into the premise of like, that was Christianity. Like, that's essentially this guy's message, almost like, yeah, God wants you to be happy. God wants you to be wealthy. God wants you to be all these different things. And so they'd gone down this track and they'd like, tell us there's something more than this. Like, tell us there's something more to following Jesus, that and so to him, it was like this big shift away from prosperity gospel, because he was suddenly having these conversations with people that were like, no, there's got to be more than that.
Totally. Yeah. Strangely, it's almost like, I don't know, am I allowed to say weird things on live YouTube and stuff?
Place,
I don't know.
Yeah, this is a place for weird things.
I don't even know if I believe what I'm about to say. Is this a safe place?
Yeah,
Internet?
yeah.
Maybe not.
It probably
is.
Internet, are you a safe place?
It's like the least safe place. And now I've built it up so much that people are going to freak out either way, no matter how controversial it is. It's almost like sometimes the prosperity gospel, what it gets wrong is the definition of the good life rather than the reality.
Yeah.
Because there are texts in the scriptures that talk about, like, he came to bring us life and life abundant. He came to, like, the kingdom of God talks about the poor being cared for. It talks about in some sense, there's a reason why the prosperity gospel, or why, like, the good life kind of stuff gets its way into the church, because Jesus talks about a lot of that stuff. But what we define as the definition of the good life is where it starts to shift. Like, if the definition of a good life is being filthy rich with awesome cars and whatever the heck I want, then Christianity is going to be a very sad situation for a lot of people. But if the definition of a good life is actually different than that.
Yeah. And then does that, like, how does that message work in Haiti? I don't know. I mean, you grew up in parts of Africa that, you know, again, like, going through whole revolution, whole struggle. Like, how does that work? I used to get to work with these single mothers in Haiti that they'd started, this lady had started a business. They were supporting about 700 women that had kids, no other family, or at least no spouse, or a husband that refused to work, which is surprisingly common in Haiti. And so, like, for them, like, what does that message mean of just pray and Jesus will make you richer? Like, what does daily bread mean to people there? That
might actually mean just simple bread, right?
Yeah, and that's, we actually had one lady that we gave a micro loan to, and her business plan was, I'm going to go to a baker in the morning and I'm going to buy 20 loaves of bread, and I'm going to sell them for 5 cents a loaf more than I paid for them. And that's like her business plan. Like, bread is her business plan. And she's like, I need $35 to start this business off, and that's going to sustain me and my family. And so, one, like, for me, like, the idea that, well, we could be involved in that, and you're kind of providing daily bread, that's incredible. But two, the simplicity of it, the humbleness of it was.
Yeah. So I used to help direct this program for young adults, and where they would go overseas and sort of do a leadership development program overseas. They would live with an African family or whatever country they were in. We had Philippines, Africa, a couple different locations. But part of my job in this role was to travel around and recruit people who wanted to be part of the program. You know, college students, so 18 to 28-year-old range is the and it was, at the time, it was all Americans who would go for 2 years and just live and learn about missions, all the stuff. And so I'd teach in college classes sometimes, or like share stuff, or, you know, pitch the program there. One of the things I love to do is, on one of the trips that I took to Côte d'Ivoire, which is where our pilot program started, I'd taken a picture of this little boy there, and I would put it on the screen, and I'd ask the college students here in America, what is your first thought when I put this photograph up? And it's like this gripping shot of, like, I'm sort of up above this little boy. He doesn't have a shirt on. His shorts are all tattered and dirty. He's got, like, dirt on his face and, like, and stuff like that. And he's just big old eyes just looking up at the camera, right? And, like, you just hear this at the college campuses. You'd hear, oh my goodness. And, like, I'm like, all right, tell me what you're thinking. They're like, I feel sorry for him. I want to help. I want to find a way to care and bring meaning. And most of these were Bible college campuses, so a lot of these students are actually planning on going on the mission field and stuff. And then after I got all their feedback, I would tell them, oh, by the way, this little boy is the son of the lead pastor of the local church there. He's healthy, vibrant, hysterical.
Yeah.
So much fun. He's loved. He's cared for. He's one of the healthiest kids there, and he exudes as much, if not more, joy than any kid here you'd see in the States. And they're like, oh. And so define, oh, this poor child. We have this misconception in so many ways because of the community that was surrounding this little guy. He was better off than a lot of the little kids here in the States who eat every day and are relationally starving.
And that's the thing, that different level of poverty, like you think about spiritual poverty, relational poverty, and physical poverty. And I still think that there's places in America that certainly have problems with physical poverty. And we actually got into this big argument in our small group after this about whether there was real poverty in America. And then the rest of the small group aren't listening, so I can say I was right. there definitely is, in my mind. And you read these stories about people in America living on a couple of dollars a day, essentially, like in some of the tiny rural areas. But so much more of what we seem to have is relational poverty and spiritual poverty. And so you just wonder, what does give us today our daily bread mean for a group of people that are relationally starving? That feels like there's something that we need there that we don't have, maybe.
Yeah. All right. So hopefully I don't put you on the spot too much here, but I know, because I talked to you a lot about sermons and Sundays and prep and stuff, but I know for some reason this passage, combined with a few other texts that you shared on Sunday in the message, they were like getting to you in a unique way personally. And you mentioned it like 3 or 4 times, not in the course of our conversations about Sunday. So like, what was going on there? Like, what was the tension in your own heart as you were wrestling through this text personally?
So I think I had made perhaps the mistake, I don't know, of reading the Sermon on the Mount every day for a couple of weeks not long ago. So that had been bad enough.
You just see him walk into the office, you'd be like, oh no.
I was just doing this. So I would walk around Costco just trying to buy food. This was around Christmas time. I was like, do I need that? Because the Sermon on the Mount is deeply uncomfortable for rich people. And just by nature of having money in a bank account and being able to make some choices.
The fact that you're at Costco.
Yeah.
With the intention of purchasing things, not getting warm.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Not just looking for samples. Suggests that I am somewhat wealthy. And then I think there was the just happening to come across Matthew 13:22, which is... which you can pull it up if you want, but it's in the middle of Jesus teaching this parable about certain types of land and how it relates to...
What was it, 13 what?
22.
13, 22.
The seed falling among the thorns refers to someone who hears the word, but the worries of this life, and in this version it says the deceitfulness of wealth. I think like in another version I had it's something like either the fascination of wealth or the false narrative of wealth just chokes everything up. And I've told most of you about my belief that like I can play the stock market and all of these different things, and it's not even that it goes horrendously badly, it's just that it consumes way more of my energy than I actually think it should. So like I think then you get into this like, what is my end game here? Because it's certainly not daily bread. You could suggest I'm taking some daily bread and investing it in getting more bread. Is that really what my time is made for? And what is that like? Is that a distraction? Is that thing? So I think that was to me like some of the angst of the passage. Like what am I hoping to get out of that? Like, okay, maybe it pays for a trip to go back and see my family in England. That could be a good thing. Maybe it pays for like, something that we might need. Maybe an appliance breaks or something like that. A car breaks down. We need to buy a new car. But in actual fact, I'm like, I think somewhere I'm just like, one day, like I'll just go and buy a yacht for ministry purposes, obviously. and So I'm just playing around somewhere, even for people that would say I'm trying to follow Jesus. Jesus is spot on. Like the false narrative of wealth, whatever that is it still can be quite persuasive. It can grab at you quite easily. And I think that was to me the angst, I think, of the passage.
I was talking with a group of guys this week, and we were talking kind of about this thing, like who gets to define and what's actually good and healthy and stuff. And it's strange that I feel like even if you're not a follower of Jesus, you kind of know that it's not money.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Like if you're asked at a 30,000 foot, like you may not live that way. Most of us don't, even in the church, don't live that way necessarily, that money is not the thing that brings us joy. But if you were to say, like, tell a story about some guy who his only goal in life was to become a multimillionaire and he rose to the top and he stepped on everyone,
his family,
it's all over Hollywood that's not the good life. So it's almost wired into how God designed us as human beings to sort of know that, as long as we're far enough away from the issue to think of it that way. What is it about money that, when we're not looking at someone else's life, what is it about money that makes us so concerned individually? Like, we can watch it in the movie and the hero is always the guy who's not that guy, right?
Yeah. Jeff Bezos is never the hero of a movie. He's the bad guy in the movie.
Fair enough. Unless he's like giving away it or something, right? Unless he's getting rid of it to give it to someone poor.
If he wants to donate to South Fellowship,
fair enough.
That's fine. I wonder whether it's. So I think you can pass money off as a means to an end. And Jesus, I'm not sure, ever says that money is bad. I think he says that the love of it is. And I tell you who I really have loved listening to. There's a British comedian called Russell Brand who he talks about just such a whole range of stuff. And one of the things I thought he said that was brilliant was he said every one of us is addicted to something. He said my addiction's just obvious. Like his addiction. He was a drug addict. He was on heroin for a while. And he was like, it was so obvious that I'm messed up that I have to deal with it. He's like, most of you guys will wake up at 60 and realize, oh, I was addicted to all this all along, or this thing all along. And it's like suddenly just occurs to you. And it could be almost anything. It could be as simple as you could be addicted to freedom, getting to do whatever you want whenever you want to do it. You could be addicted to golf. You could be addicted to a video game, almost anything. And so I think money has this pull of like, what do they say that someone said once, like which million is a millionaire's favorite million? And the answer is the next one. Like there's always another thing to get. It's almost like in The Simpsons, the billionaire guy, Mr. Burns, who owns half of town or whatever. Like Homer at one point says to him, "Hey, Mr. Burns, you're the richest man I know, way richer than my other rich friends." And Mr. Burns looks at him and says, "Oh yeah, but I'd trade it all for a little more." Like, and I think that's what money can do to you. It can grab you in that, like, yeah.
So how is the invitation of Jesus in the Lord's Prayer different? I know you talked about that on Sunday, but could you summarize, if that's not what he's saying, give us this day our daily bread. In other words, give me everything I need, think I need.
Yeah.
What is he saying?
Well, I would hope it feels to me like it's even bigger than just enough. If it's connected to that kingdom thing before, which I think it is somewhere, it's give me the resources that I need to be a vital and vibrant part of your kingdom work. Like give me enough to sustain me. Yes, enough for my family to live on. And, but it's also, I have a role to play. Give me the things that I need to get on with that task. Which is very inclusive, and I love that.
Yeah, I don't know if any of you out there have been part of like a strategic budgeting model for an organization or a business, and or if you've ever managed a budget for an organization. There's something powerful about, like, if you get the vision really, really clearly, and then budget towards that thing. Asking for that budget is you can have more confidence that the budget's going to be approved by the board or whoever it is that approves budgets. If you can like clearly connect your budget request with the very heartbeat, mission critical realities of a business or an organization or a church or whatever, it's way easier to stomach both asking and receiving that request. And in one sense, when we say, give us this day our daily bread, it's kind of like, Lord, I want to be part of this kingdom. I want to understand it. How, there's that sort of woven throughout the prayer. And then when you say, give me this day my daily bread, it's like, hey, I want to start bringing your kingdom, so I'm going to need some stuff.
Yeah, I'm going to need some
stuff. Like totally, I need to like at least be able to eat. There's this physical need thing. I need wisdom. I need all these
energy,
other things.
I need to get up in the morning and have the strength to continue.
I need this relational thing, or even a brokenness in me that's preventing me from like living out the kingdom well. Like I've got this issue in my heart, this angerness or this bitterness. So maybe daily bread is partially that. So it's your budget request to the king. Yeah, the king.
and I think like with how church budgets work, if someone comes to me and says, "Oh, I want to do this thing that might reach unchurched people," I'm like, "Oh yeah, we can find the budget for that. That's fine. Like that, let's do that. That sounds wonderful." I think it's intriguing that throughout the Old Testament, particularly, the idea of bread was connected to God's presence. So somewhere when you think about like that language of what when you say give us your daily bread in the light of the kingdom, it's like be present with us as we're doing your work. Don't leave us by ourselves, which is which is very cool.
Like he even says in the Great Commission, and lo, I'll be with you always, kind of thing. Yeah. So, what were some of the things that you challenged us with on Sunday to take away from this? Like maybe some spiritual disciplines, or if you didn't get a chance to share all of the ideas that you had, are there some spiritual disciplines for us to engage with this subject matter well?
Well, I think it seems like there is somewhere potentially the implication that we could be eating somebody else's bread. I mean, that I'm stretching it a little bit, but like there's a question to ask, like what if you have so much, and that passage that we went back to in Exodus where it says some of them just gathered loads and tried to keep it for the day after. It wasn't as good when they went back to it the next day. And somewhere it seems at least giving is a spiritual discipline. I'm not even talking about giving to a local church or even to South in particular. I'm just saying that somewhere if we get into a mindset that we have a pool of resources that build up and we try and keep them as close to us as possible and only spend them on us and only use them to engage with our family, it's probably not going to be very healthy for us in the long run. We probably need to find an outlet somewhere to keep the flow moving. So I think that in itself is this really great spiritual discipline. To choose not to hoard stuff, to hold on to it.
Which you drew out of the idea that he said, give us.
Yeah, it's a plural. Now, my wife would tell you I'm a hoarder, so I think she's like, you should listen to your own message. Like, I keep everything.
Isn't that the frustration of like communicating things or preaching?
It's terrible. Yeah.
You say stuff and you're like, I should do this.
Yeah. And then your wife says, you should do this too.
This is why I don't preach very often. Yeah. No.
I just, stuff goes in the garage and it just stays there. I'm terrible with books. Like I hate giving away books because it means I don't have that book anymore. And so I'd actually rather go and buy someone another copy of the book than lend them it and have the potential that they might not bring it back. So I think that is definitely one of those things. And then I think we landed in this place that recognized that the language about bread always at least has the potential to be spiritual. That Jesus really pushes those first followers of his on, I'm the bread of life. Without me, your life is empty. It's meaningless. It's nothing. And ultimately ends in death. And their reaction is, I don't like this message. And so a lot of them just disappear off at that moment. So I think that in itself is a practical challenge or an important challenge for even us, those of us that think we're following Jesus. These were people following Jesus. And he pushes them that little bit further and says, am I really, do you really see me as the thing that you need? And they're actually in the context of worrying about physical daily bread. And it's almost like he, at that moment, after feeding them, after taking care of it, is like, there's this other thing. Stop getting obsessed with the physical bread thing. If all you're coming back to me for day after day is just that thing, then you've missed what I'm saying.
So the kingdom of God is not just a place where everyone's belly is full.
It doesn't seem like it, no.
It's a place that may include that long range. But if that's it, gosh, it's such a small, insignificant kingdom.
And that's why fasting comes out of that. And maybe fasting is a spiritual discipline that we do in this season to remind ourselves, God has given me daily bread, but I actually can survive the day without bread. I think you have this kind of fringe-ish theory that, like, I think we've talked about this before, that actually, like, you can survive way, way, way longer without physical bread than people believe, right? That if you can practice the spiritual.
Well, it's not my theory. It's Dallas Willard.
Oh, is it?
Remember we were talking about that?
Like, you got it from. I wanted to give you credit for it.
Wow. Well, thank you. If I came up with a theory even remotely close to what like Dallas Willard might come up, then I feel like I'm doing well. I should write books.
Yeah, you should. Yeah.
I'm kind of a genius.
Yeah, well, then we could have loads of money. We could get that yacht.
No, I definitely did not. But I actually was asking you because he sort of makes this assertion a couple places, and I just really haven't explored it a ton in all of his writing. But he does say, like, if you practice fasting in the right and healthy way, you learn that there is bread that is beyond the physical. Now, he almost hints that it has some sort of physical sustenance to it.
That's what I mean. That was where I had a friend that did a fast for 40 days and he collapsed on like day 39.
Yeah. So I'm not, one of the things that's weird about Dallas Willard is he tends to be, or at least in regards to this issue, a lot of his theology tends to be very earthy. It's very grounded in the physical world. In fact, in some senses, that's one of the things that he did really well, is helped like redeem the whole idea that we are physical creatures and that God, the incarnation itself, the fact that Jesus became one of us, affirms our humanity, our physical nature, and all this stuff. Like he's a big fan of that. And then he says this thing about fasting, like hyper spiritualizes fasting, like your physical body gets sustenance from this spiritual practice. And I was kind of like, so Dallas Willard, oh shoot, yeah, he's gone. So, but maybe someone out there who's read more of his stuff can explain that.
Like learn his ways, or we need Richard Foster or someone to say, hey, this is what he really meant, John Ulberg, like some guy.
And maybe he's just talking about like your soul is more full or something, and that would make sense. But he does have this, like, I don't know, a few things I've read where I'm like,
yeah, and he has this like. One, he has this ability, like I think the Jesus that he followed, to say something almost like as a bit of a throwaway, and then move on to something else. You're like, wait, go back to that thing.
Like everything he said.
What did you mean by that thing? And then I remember one of my favorite stories about Dallas Willard was that at some point someone said, like, how do you think Dallas Willard handled going to heaven and coming into the presence of God? And they were like, well, I think it probably took him a couple of days to figure it out. Like he lived on such a spiritual level that it was like, oh yeah, this is the thing now. This is where I am. Like something's different, and it finally is like, it finally twigs. And so you could see him saying something like that. Whereas whenever I do fasting, which isn't a load, but it is some. One, I've noticed that the first day I'm miserable. And then like day 2 or day 3, I start to find it a little bit addictive almost. It's like, oh, I could go further. I could go further. But then like I do definitely have this, maybe the word is earthiness, that I like food. I like steak. I like bread. I like these things. And it's difficult. It's work for me. Like silence is work for me.
Well, and that's why they call it a practice, I think, right?
Yes,
Yeah, I think of fasting like I recently did semi longer fast. I mean, not super long, couple 48 hours, but for me, it's almost like lifting weights, spiritually speaking. It's saying, hey, body, you are not the boss. My soul in the kingdom of God is the boss.
Yeah.
And like whenever I'm doing a fast or a spiritual discipline that's related to the body, where you sort of intentionally choose to abstain from something, there's spiritual disciplines of abstinence and spiritual disciplines of action. Or so when I've done one of those, some sort of abstinence spiritual practice, it just screams how much my body wants to control my life. You need this, and the cravings, all of these sorts of things start to well up, and you're like, wow, I didn't even realize how much of my life and my decisions in life are just like rolling with whatever my body decides it should do.
Yeah, well, I was just doing this Whole30 thing, not doing it anymore. And so suddenly you realize, like, you wake up in the morning, I'm just going to grab a couple of cookies and eat them with my tea. I'm going to just grab this. And it's so like casual, especially in the kind of environment that we may be living. I find that whenever I do fasting, it has this incredible way of making me think about feeding the spiritual side or the soul side of me. So my body starts to say, you're hungry, and my soul gets to say, so then feed your soul. So then go and pursue these spiritual things. It's like a reminder. It's almost like a thing you can't avoid. It makes you go and engage. When so often we just get busy, we just get contented, and we can get through a day and be like, wow, God, how much attention did you get of mine during the week? So if someone was going to try fasting for the same time, for the first time, what advice would you give them?
Like a longer than a, intermittent fasting situation.
Yeah, like 24 hours plus.
Yeah. I mean, I think that the tension is the point. So if it's uncomfortable, you're doing it right.
Yeah.
Like that's part of the thing, that discomfort. And I think it's also really important to not over spiritualize it in the sense that like suddenly you become this amazing human being. And so actually it's usually the opposite. Usually like all of especially initially, like I get grouchy. Sometimes you get headaches. Sometimes you just feel uncomfortable and you just desperately want to eat. And you're like, I'm supposed to be praying and, all of that sort of like, yep.
Yeah.
That's all in you. And then, so maybe like, especially in those first few days, because that somewhere around day 3 is when your body stops like crying out. Usually for a lot of people, the body stops crying out as ferociously, maybe. And you start to get into a little bit more of a rhythm. But during those first few days, which most people, that's all they ever end up with, myself included.
Yeah, me
I've
too.
only done 1 or 2 ever longer than that. You may not feel very spiritual. Does that mean you failed as someone who's fasting? Like, I'm not doing it right. I don't feel hyper spiritual. Well, I think maybe one of the tips is bring that to Jesus. Say, I'm messed up. Like, I'm grouchy.
Yeah.
My body's like yelling at me. I'm short with my family, whatever. And you're like, yeah, that's all in you. And then say, all right, Jesus, I need your help. Give me my daily bread in the spiritual sense and help me to live according to your way, even when my body is trying to take over my life. What about you? Do you have any tips? Don't do it.
So I think I agree with what a lot of what you said. I think when I first did fasting, I would try and fill my day with as much as possible, or find things, like I would drink things that would try and make me feel fuller to avoid some of the physical inconvenience of it. And then I think as I got older or did it more, I was like, well, no, you're kind of defeating the point there. Like it's not about making it as easy as possible. So I actually don't know that theoretically emptying your house of everything that you'd like to eat is actually a good step into fasting. I actually think, no, the fact that it's there is maybe one of the better reminders. It's actually one of the things that helps you on that journey.
Yeah, actually, the last time I did a little bit longer fast, this 48-hour fast, one of the most spiritual moments for me was it just happened to be, if you haven't heard already, my wife's pregnant. And
Congratulations.
thank you. She just wasn't feeling well. And so I ended up made all the meals
Yeah.
for my family, but I wasn't eating. That was actually that's when Jesus actually met me.
Huh. You were serving meals that you couldn't eat.
I don't know why. I should probably sit down and journal about it so that it like completes the thought. But it felt like Jesus met me in those moments while I'm cooking a meal and smelling it all and seeing it and then serving, and I'm not partaking. That actually felt something really powerful
so
in my relationship with
you didn't just cook really bad food during that season.
No, actually, I actually doubled down on at least one of the meals where I was like, no, I'm going to go. I have extra time because I'm not trying to do this other stuff.
Such a better person than me. I would have cooked all the things I don't like.
Yeah.
It's like spam for dinner 3 days a week.
No, there was something beautiful about that for me. And I think that actually touched me more than just the fast in and of itself.
So do you find when Allison is pregnant, are you good at the whole like sympathy part in terms of like when Laura was pregnant, she was like, well, I'm not allowed, she loves Guinness, the beer. And she's like, so if I can't drink it now, you can't drink it either. And it was like, I don't know that that's true. Like,
I don't know. I think that's a question for my wife. Because if I answer it wrong, I'll be in trouble either way.
Absolutely.
Yo, I'm awesome at sympathy.
Yeah, you should say it on Sunday morning.
You should cross check that with my wife. Otherwise, final thoughts. Any final thoughts? Like we've just meandered all sorts of ways around the subject, but any final thoughts specifically?
Final thoughts are bread is good, but it's not everything, and we tend to make it everything. And when I say bread now, I'm talking about stuff. I think that's what happens. Like the bread is necessary. Jesus values it. He gave it to people. He spoke into that conversation. But again, I think we tend to make it the thing. And I think Jesus kind of leads us to say, no, it's not the thing. And certainly just collecting more and more of it, like believing that the more you have of it, the happier you'll be or better off you'll be is not accurate. Yeah.
So when he says he teaches us to pray for bread, it's got to mean more than just getting more things.
Yeah. So if that to you is a reading of like, this is my chance to just ask God for lots of stuff. Like it's Christmas list time. And I think like we didn't even get to the fact that that's usually where we start, let alone like whether it's valuable or not. Quite often we come to God and we're like, hey, I got a bunch of stuff that I need off you. That seems like it's got so much more to it. When he says daily bread, it's not supposed to be just it's shopping time.
Yeah. With maybe one pastoral caveat. I'm not going to contradict my pastor here at all.
Contradict away. This is what this space is for.
I think maybe, and I don't know if this is grounded anywhere. Again, I'm venturing into unknown territory, heresy right here.
Yeah.
No, I think it's better to go to Jesus in prayer than not at all.
Definitely.
So if you're in a place where you're just like, I have needs, like you're talking to him at least. I think maybe there's a little bit of a truth to that, where at least you're going to the right source.
Yes.
And like a good father who said, when my child comes to me and says, can I have M&Ms? The answer is not always yes.
What?
It's not always yes, depending on what they ate earlier in the day. But I love that they come to me.
Good. I always say yes to him.
All right, fine. I'm wrong.
No,
I'm wrong.
No,
God says he always says yes. Give us this day our daily M&Ms.
Yeah. I think you're right. Like there's almost no thing that you can say to God that is worse than just never approaching him.
Totally. So if that's all you've got in prayer, if that's all you're capable of right now, I think God's like, it's just so good to see you here with me.
In a few weeks, we're going to get into Lent, into some of the imprecatory Psalms and stuff like that. And you see it almost there, like even like coming to God with a shaking fist and rage and anger is way better than just taking that and burying it deeply somewhere else.
He's like the safest place to do that.
Yeah.
Throw the fit at him, and then he's more gracious and kind about it. Oh, we actually have a comment here. I'm just going to see. Oh, it's Ken Smith.
Ken Smith.
All right. Well, at least Ken was on there. It's not. I don't think he's asking a question or anything. Otherwise, we might try and address it live.
Address it live. I would definitely address it live if it was
be
a question
fun.
that I wanted to ask.
I would definitely. You just said nothing. I would definitely do it if it was what I wanted to do.
Yeah. Absolutely. 60% of the time, I'd do it 100%
Have
of the time.
you considered politics by any chance? Let me answer that question with a question.
Yeah.
I think that's it, folks, for today. If you do have questions, feel free to drop them in the comments section. I should probably do all the things that all those YouTubers do and say, if you like this content, subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're going to be doing this every week. And yeah, feel free to drop in questions about this. I know we meandered all over the place, and maybe if we have enough pervasive questions in a specific area, we'll just commandeer one of our live streams to address some of those questions more precisely. Yeah, we hope this serves you. We hope that this helps you think through the idea of this prayer a little bit more.
Yeah.
Anything else?
That's it.
That's it.
Enjoy some bread.
Did we do all the YouTube-y things?
You'd have to ask Teresa or someone wiser in that department than I.
Yeah. Maybe we'll get better at this.
Maybe.
But I doubt it. See y'all.
See you guys.